anonymous. All right. Welcome everybody to the weekly probate mastery group coaching call on the Estate Professionals Mastermind podcast. We had everybody showed up a little early today and was pre-gaming. Sorry I was late. I just finished a multiple offer situation, maybe one of the last ones in a while, but it was actually on this house, one of the very first probate houses I ever bought. So we just ratified a contract for more than double what I paid for it after 150 people came through in 4 days. So lots of interest in the Roanoke market still. I wanted to start today with kind of an announcement of a new service we're offering right now just for CPEs, just for you guys.
So we have been hearing your cries for some marketing analysis help, and we don't have a full team of marketing experts, but we do have Kat, and Kat is phenomenal, and she has so graciously offered a marketing analysis. We're only offering it for our CPEs. Kat has, as I said, very graciously offered some of her time and availability. So she just put the link in your chat right now so you can see on the landing page that explains what this is. We've got two different offers. One is a marketing analysis consultation, which is a little bit lighter. It's only 30 minutes. It's a great opportunity for you to go over some of your marketing collateral. So she can review that or go over some branding suggestions, go over your wording, your copy, just a little bit of a lighter scope. And then the second offer is a deep, in-depth, hour-long marketing analysis review where you can really solidify your marketing goals, go through your marketing strategies. You can also go through your collateral as well and branding suggestions. But this is your time, and she will customize her advice specifically for your needs.
How do we go about setting up one of those appointments with Kat?
Great question. Yep, I'll go ahead and answer it.
Yep.
Stealing the floor here. So if you follow the link that Kat put in the chat here, it'll give you an option to choose one of the two appointments that you want, either that lighter consultation or the more in-depth review. So you'll click on that, you'll purchase, and then after purchasing, the page will reload to an invitation for you to take. You'll fill out a form. So you'll pay, the page will reload, it'll have a button for you to fill out a form where Kat just asks a couple questions about what you're needing. And then from there, when you are going through the form, the very last questions is going to ask you to schedule your appointment. And then you will receive an email notification prior to your appointment.
Perfect. Thank you, McKenna.
Absolutely.
Sorry guys, this huge bolt of lightning came and my Wi-Fi just left, but it rebooted. So thanks for covering it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll start there. Does anybody have any questions on the marketing review or before we get started on other things?
I'm busy setting up for it. So,
all right. If you have any other questions about that, drop them in the chat and we'll circle back. But there's lots of talk back and forth. It's still 50-50 at this point. I think the Bulls versus the Bears, but curious to hear for those of you that are in the market that you've seen actually slow significantly and what you expect to happen. Have you spoken to the lenders? Do you expect buyer demand to drop even further after the Fed meeting on Wednesday? Like, is anybody witnessing that? Like I'm seeing it in Florida for sure. Renee, no? Yeah, it's the opposite in Roanoke still, but it is starting to show in some markets. We're seeing days on market climb, price reductions happening multiple times in the first 30 days. So the reason I bring that up, if you have sellers that are testing the price, like if they're trying to test the market, you might let them know like another 0.5 point rate is likely, we'll find out more tomorrow, but you can create some seller urgency in the market because it does seem to be shifting in a lot of areas, and real estate's local. It's not a broad statement. It's not going to happen everywhere at the same time. But what I learned in 2007, I saw something. And I saw seller inventory ramping up at the ski resort where I was working. And all of a sudden I went from 25 listings to 150 listings. And I'm like, I have more than I can possibly service. So I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. So I said, I don't understand what's happening, but I got to find cash flow to sell. And that's how I ended up finding the indoor water park resort that we built in the Smoky Mountains. But the Smoky Mountains was my recession market. I went there to weather the storm, and the resort we were selling was like a true 12 cap. So I made a vow to myself to try to understand and see it coming next time. So I'm a little hyper aware because I've been looking for the signs. But to me, it seems very similar to those times. Like buyer sentiment is starting to wane in a lot of places. Sellers are starting to drop prices. It didn't sell in a day, and their price reductions at like day 7, day 14. So there's some early indicators. Now, I will remind you that the timeline of when I felt it, I didn't understand what was happening, but that was in about May of 07. I moved in June of 07. It was about March of 07. And I made the decision to move in May. I made the move the first week of June. We pre-sold the project, started construction, and made it all the way around to, I think it was August or September of 08, when the Fed finally had to admit that there was a problem when Bear Stearns and AIG failed overnight, and Lehman Brothers. And that's when they had to let the cat out of the bag. So it was like the actual 2008 crash. Really, if you look at the Fed distress, the financial distress index, it happened right around June of 07. So these early indicators that we're seeing right now might be an indication that something is shifting. And Bill Gross, I know you do market updates and you have a strong opinion on inventory levels. Feel free to jump in, but I have seen softening for sure across the people in my network.
So the way I describe it is when I drive from LA to Vegas, there are stretches that, let's not say me, let's say some other guy might drive 100 miles an hour. Right. And then all of a sudden you see headlights and you slow down to like 65 or so, but you're still going 65 on a straight freeway. That's what it feels like now. And I think that there's certainly some oomph out of the intensity, but still getting buyer right after another buyer, falls out of escrow, getting phone calls right away.
Yeah.
It's still more intense than a normal seller's market or than a normal market. And when you look at the statistics, the foreclosures, while increasing, are from a very low base or insignificant.
Yeah.
The inventory is way too low to really drive down prices. And some sellers, therefore, just decide not to sell and not to buy, relocate. And so it's going to be tougher for agents, I think, to find business. Why I think probate becomes more valuable, because people are still going to die and have to do something with the property. But I think from an overall market point of view, values I don't see dropping. And I saw a great analysis by Fannie Mae where they said with inflation, it might be the home appreciation is well below inflation rate, might be 5 or 6% versus 15% or 10%. But still, that's appreciation, not depreciation. I don't think we're likely to see anything close to that unless things change dramatically. Now, if Russia and Ukraine start lobbing nukes at each other, it's a whole different ballgame. But as we're sitting now, I think it's going to be a good, solid market, but it'll be one that we need to roll up our sleeves and work extra hard in.
What I learned last time is buyer demand literally shut off in what felt like days. And there was plenty of supply, but when the buyers were done, they were done. And then the market just loaded, and that's when downward price pressure began. So that was in a second home market. I know not many folks in this community have specialized in second home communities, and I'm not anymore either. I really haven't dug that deep. I just, like David Pinnell was on last week and he showed, what did he say? They went from 14 foreclosures the previous month to 441, I think. And I've seen that in just a handful of markets. I looked at Black Knight's data and Realty Track's data, and I can't actually find evidence that it's happening widespread. It seems to be locally, not even regionally. But anyways, just wanted to give you guys a chance to share your opinion if you have a voice. If it does shift, you do see that buyer demand plummet, that's when, you start getting explained to your sellers. So keep up on the market, because it can move really quickly if things do make a big shift with the appreciation levels we've had. And you can catch a falling knife with it. If you have probate sellers that are in probate quicksand, catching a falling knife can be as simple as actually getting the home on the market and not making excuses about cleaning out the garage. And that's a common scenario. So Renee, what you got for us today?
Hi, guys. Bill always says it so eloquently, so I'm just going to go off the coattails of Bill. And yeah, I just, in terms of Los Angeles, it's so interesting. I sold REO in the last down market, and if LA falls off a cliff, then we're really in trouble. So it's hard to say, right? And there's so many different micro markets within a county. Like I always say, Los Angeles is like a bunch of different neighborhoods trying to be a city. So the minute you have one opinion about one area or even one home, that it doesn't apply to another section. So that leads me into my win for the week. I had an opportunity do. I'll say it's not really a listing appointment. It's more like a cattle call, but I keep making it through the rungs. So, okay. It's a gal that I called on an old probe. I've been keeping up with her for year and a half, 2 years. I believe she was the originating executrix. That didn't work out. They hired a fiduciary. That gal was in Virginia. I live in Los Angeles, California. So that was always interesting. But anyway, she remembered me and out of the blue gave my name because I only called her like maybe quarterly or something, right? So out of the blue, she emailed me and said, I don't know how this is going to go, but I logged your name to the fiduciary. And it's in this area called Pacific Palisades, which is very high end. This is a mid-century modern home that's going to probably be hopefully not a tear down. It's the originating owner. And we just went yesterday. So I made it to the now second rung. And the third rung will be her just cattle calling X number of agents in the area. And then she will present that to the family and they'll make their decision based on price. Why I'm sharing that with you is the win for the week. It's like, I feel like I'm in some sort of lottery. I keep making it like to the next level, but I also hooked up with another agent. I do not sell on that price point and I do not sell in that area. So don't be afraid to squat up with people who know better. And you just never know what you're going to learn. I coach a lot with Chris Voss, and he has something that he refers to as being the fool or the favorite. Are you the fool in the situation? Or are you the favorite in the situation? And I don't think that this completely applies to either, because I even think this fiduciary is out over her skis with this price point. She definitely has her favorite agents, but they probably don't even sell on this price point or this type of special property. So that's why she's going more broad. But I think sometimes in your career, it's worth it to get in your car and drive a half an hour or maybe 45 minutes just to get in front of somebody, to see a new opportunity, to be in a new price point that you might not work in. And like I said, squat out with people. It never hurts to maybe go to open houses and get to know agents in different price points. So if you ever come across something like this in your probate phone calls, that you'll be ready to go, especially if it is something that's in the high end. And by the way, this was just on a list. It's not like all high end probates. It was just on a list. So be prepared in your day. But we'll see. The next decision is the decision. She'll, meet with the family. We're going to send our proposal and she'll meet with the family and they'll make that decision. But it was cool to walk into a time capsule. The house was the originating owners from a mid-century modern home in the Pacific Palisades in LA. It's gorgeous. It was lovely to be there.
It's
So.
neat to see that like the luxury touches on those, like those early to mid 50s, mid-centuries. Like I had never seen it until I moved to Virginia actually, but here they have an in-ceiling radiant heat with like a really like Leave It to Beaver kind of 1950 style thermostat. It was radiant heat, and in the corners it looked like a perfect 45-degree crown. But then it was in the ceiling plaster. They actually laid the heating elements in the plaster. So I'm like, where's the heating in this place? How's it heated? There was nothing. You couldn't tell, but it was like inside the plaster, radiant heat. They had surround sound throughout the entire house. And this was like 1950 construction. So you see some neat things from back in the day.
Yeah, it was cool. There were no, except for the kitchen, there were no like pulls for the cabinets anywhere in the house. So they were like seamless cabinets. So it basically just looked like one wall everywhere you looked. Like when you go down your hallway or whatever, you got your closet, your sliding door, all that, you can tell it's a closet. You couldn't tell there were closets anywhere. So you got to know where you put your stuff at least. You're like, wait, it's the third panel from the left.
Pacific Palisades is nice. You're going to have yourself a several $1 million listing.
We shall see. I will judge the next two.
It's interesting. And just a quick story since Chad's not here on the experienced fiduciary. So the number one realtor in probate in Los Angeles has some great relationships with some of those top fiduciaries. And I just was represented an investor who bought one of their properties at court confirmation. And I think for all the people on the call, I want to say this is why I got in this training, because she has some great relationships, but she's not a very good real estate agent. And she has a team and people and marketing and a prestigious name and office and all that. But they just miss the little details that in probate are so critical. They use their in-house escrow, who's terrible. Never in California, you have to get a copy of the certified order to start the clock on the buyer. Never even got it. My buyer was anxious to close, so we pushed forward. But if the buyer wanted to drag their feet, they didn't even know what it would take to force us to close. It took them 8 days to get the initial escrow package out. So there are a lot of little details that some of these great agents make. And I actually made some videos I'm going to start sending to the attorneys that do in this particular niche of business. But I would just say on a bigger picture, the people have been around a long time. They made a lot of money. In some cases, they're very satisfied, very content. If you're hungry, Just ask yourself what you have to do to take down that business. Don't assume because they have the relationship that you can't pry a piece away from it. Because just like you look in the jungle, there's hungry hyenas who get some meat from the lions once in a while, and that's a start. And then you can build your business.
That's
Okay.
well said, Bill, because I think too, like some of the folks on this call are in big cities like we are, or maybe even B cities, but there's enough, meat on the bone. And I don't know why that is. It's like sometimes a human nature, like, oh, that person just has it all, or there's not enough for me. It's almost like a little bit of a lack mentality.
Right.
So I say it lovingly because we all go through it, but it's like check yourself mentally,
Right.
first and foremost for everything. And then just realize that there is enough for everybody. So come from an abundance mindset, just like Bill and I are in the same city. It's huge here. And Bill is a different profile than me. Maybe I'm going to resonate with somebody and he resonates with like all that. So it's fine. Like there's plenty of business to be had. So just put your mind to it as well. That I think I know who he's talking about. And it's neither here nor there, but she's been doing this a long time. And you're right. It's just like some of the people that are high end. Look at me, like high end agents in Pacific Palisades. Like, who am I? I don't even sell. I don't live there. I don't sell there. I do nothing. But I know that I can be of value and of service. And if I can partner with the right agent, that agent that I know who does know Pacific Palisades does 0.0 understanding of what a trust is or fiduciary or anything. And so when I was at least in there in that conversation, I was addressing her in that way. So we made a nice 1-2 punch. Because he would have just stood there and razzle dazzled this lady and probably annoyed her, frankly, because she's heard it all. So it's important to like bring on someone like ourselves or whatever in that situation.
And Renee, I had a question for you. You had mentioned that this fiduciary was in another state.
No, I'm sorry. The originating woman who I called off the probate list, she remembered me, probably because I was consistent, frankly. It's not like I had
Cool.
a cool conversation with her. She was fine, but she put my name in front of the fiduciary. I would have never gotten
Perfect.
her.
Oh,
Yeah.
got it. Perfect. Okay. Because I was like, how do you call fiduciaries?
It's a similar situation. There's a fiduciary association. You can look it up. They have state chapters. You can become I forget what the title is, like a member price, and you can go to all their events and stuff and hobnob, but it's a similar situation.
I have a colleague who's a professional fiduciary, and that's how she gets her business. And she lists it herself, and sometimes she takes one fee or the other. Sometimes she gets both, depends on the transaction. But do the math. I think we get intimidated when some high-end agent who does $100 million a year of luxury property, and you're going on a listing on a $25 million property. It sounds very impressive. But if they do 100 million in this $25 million house, that means they do 4 transactions a
Yeah.
year. And what I learned in coaching some of those high-end agents is that you can't be good at doing 4 deals a year. If you just don't talk to enough people, you might have the reputation, or you might have the pedigree, or the education, or the connections, or the Rolodex, or the family tree to get those deals. But it doesn't mean you're going to do a good job on those 4 deals. And those people tend to hire a lot of staff and assistants and a lot of other people. But now the customer is going to get service only as good as that staff or assistant who only does 4 deals. How good can you manage people if you only do 4 deals a year? So that's the thing I try to emphasize, when I do get a little over my price range, and it's something I've been pushing myself. I'm not in that range at all. I don't even market that range typically. But I will say that if that was your ambition, I wouldn't back off on that at all, because at the end of the day, the fundamentals are the same. And where there's a difference, my experience is the sellers who really want a celebrity, a realtor, they often will overprice the house because it's about their ego. They imagine that the celebrity agent will bring them a higher price. That's not true at all. A great agent will maximize the price they can get, but they won't get them more. They'll just make sure they can close in the terms that they agree to. And so I think I wouldn't back off. If that's your ambition in life, I would back off it. And I didn't. In probate, I've gone after these people aggressively, politely, professionally, but I don't care how much business they do. If I do my job, I'll get customers who need me. Okay, so it looks like Chad's having some technical issues in Virginia. I can't say for the record that the weather here in Los Angeles is perfect. I took a walk outside. It's 68 degrees, light breeze, sunny, views from the ocean to the mountains. Not quite as good as John Faker's view there in the background, but anybody have any questions? John, I know you mentioned the PFAC. Maybe you could talk a little bit. Are you a member?
Yeah, no, I'm not a member specifically. So I talk a little bit about this. I go over this with every single one of my clients when I'm designing trusts and so forth. So there's only a handful of states currently that professionally regulate people who are trustees or fiduciaries for other people. Now, the category I'm talking about are not bank trust departments, right? When I entered my career in the late 90s, bank trust departments were about the only game in town. And then everything else was the Wild West, right? And the real problem is we had people who were taking advantage of other people by being fiduciaries for 10, 12 people, not related to them, and not really knowing any of the laws as it pertains to fiduciary account management and so on. So California, this is back in the 2000s, decided to regulate it. And so the rule, as far as the fiduciaries go here, is that if you're a trustee for more than one trust and they are not a family member, so you can be a trustee for as many family members as you want, but if they're not a family member, you have to be licensed, insured, regulated, bonded, the whole deal. So, and that makes California fairly unique. I think New York has something like that. I don't know if anyone watched, I think John Oliver did something on fiduciary as being scam or overworked. And that is absolutely true in many states that don't regulate it. So I'm part of a LinkedIn group for guardians and fiduciaries. And the guy who started the group's from New York, and he was complaining about that episode. I'm like, you and I are in the two most regulated states in America. Like, we're one of the few people doing this professionally. They had a guy in that show who was like elder guardian for 4,000 clients. That's not mathematically possible to check in on that many people, even if you were a company, let alone a one-stop shop. So PFAC, Professional Fiduciary Association of California, is our regulatory body. So they are the ones that make sure in the training, the education, that everybody who enters this space, and there's a huge demand, supply and demand issues. You want to talk about crazy and lopsided, there's way more demand than there will ever be supply. Every time I meet a new PFAC, I'm like, you chose the right industry if you want to be full of work with almost no effort. People will find you. But part of that is also finding somebody with the appropriate background for your client's needs, right? So if you have a sophisticated investor client and they want a professional trustee to handle more sophisticated stuff, then you need a PFAC member with a business background, a law background, a CPA background. But there's a lot of people who enter the space from healthcare side, which is excellent. But you just want to make sure that if you're choosing a fiduciary for your clients, you're picking somebody who's in the correct lane.
Yeah, I used to, when pre-COVID, when I went to court every day, there's a whole class of people who were fiduciaries, and they offered for either no cost or the court rate cost,
Yep.
be appointed as fiduciaries for guardians, for children, for conservatorships, people who are incapacitated, and estates. And it just, to me, this be thankless work, but I think they did that because then other attorneys would refer them business and the judges would appoint them cases, kind of a way they earn some of their business. But
yeah, I mean, if you have the administrative mindset to make something like a PFAC career go, it's gold mine.
Yeah, I agree. I have a prejudice
because the supply and demand issue is so out of whack. Every now and then I'll meet somebody who's new and they get themselves over their skis because they get the wrong lane, like a contentious family situation. I had a case where the family picked a guy who was like, his ink on his business card was still drying and had no idea what he was doing. And in the family that was my clients that I was trying to help keep from killing each other. Like I met the guy and I said, look, if these guys could agree on the color of this guy, you wouldn't be here. They're being nice to you now, but I don't want you to come in here and get run off when it hits the fan. And he's like, oh no, I'm fine. And he was gone in a month. He quit. He made it. I went over my emails. He made it about 3.5 weeks. So you got to pick somebody who's up for the family conflict if that's your lane.
And then on the flip side of this, as a real estate agent or investor, but primarily real estate agent, I talk to agents who call me all the time offline and say, how do I build my business? How do I build a real estate business in probate? And if they're an experienced agent, the first thing I always go to is, have you done some probate business? And they'll say, yeah, I've done 10 over the years. I say, well, pull those 10 files, find out who the attorneys were on those files, and then look, was there also fiduciaries? And call these people, because the truth is, if you got one of those right people and you've done a deal with them, it's not a cold call, you've done a deal with them. And if you approach it properly, you get a relationship with them. And I've seen people build careers on one or two primary relationships. Now, what that means is every time they do business, they transact with you. And then there's the other party, there's the other realtor, there's the other seller, there's the other whatever, attorneys in the case. Oftentimes in these fiduciaries, there's multiple attorneys because you have multiple heirs, and there's a guardian, which means there's a kid, but then there's the parents who want the money, or there's the cousins who want the money. And you have a chance to meet 5 or 6 attorneys in some of these cases. So I always tell agents, go back to files you've done already first, look them up, go into probate files, see if you can find out who those attorneys were, reach out to them, try to rebuild that relationship that you missed. And also in the meantime, even if you get a deal that's not a probate lead generation, it just happens to be a probate, there's still an attorney attached to that. There might be a fiduciary who has 4,000 clients attached to it. Reach out to them. That's the opportunity if you do your job properly. Okay, Khalid says he looks it up for Jersey's only bring up financial planners. A lot of the members of PFAC are affiliates, right? So I think what John's referring to is there's a professional organization of fiduciaries, professional fiduciaries. But having been to that, there's a group that meets in Long Beach, for example. Most of the people who attend, their primary business is servicing to fiduciaries. It's kind of like when you go to a bar event. I don't know what it's like now, but pre-COVID, most of the people at the Bar Association mixer were not attorneys. They were people trying to get business with the attorneys that were there. So that's part of the business. The challenge of it is to get to the few people who have the business. But the reality, I think, Khalid, is might be most members are financial planners, but you're looking for the fiduciary association, and those members are the ones you're trying to talk to.
Yeah. Bill, to be clear, for those who are unaware, PFAC is California. So that's the scene in PFAC, Professional Fiduciary Association of California. And I don't know whether or not New Jersey has our equivalent. Like I was saying at the beginning, most states don't have regulation of fiduciaries the way that we do and the way New York does. So I don't even know if New Jersey, they may. I haven't looked into it because I only practice in California. But if you don't have that type of fiduciary there, you can definitely build relationships with estate planning councils, which is it. I've talked about that before, which is financial planners, insurance, CPAs, attorneys, bankers, trust officers, the mixer or the professional networking groups. And you can, shoot fish in a barrel there for the people you want to be in front of.
There must be an equivalent. I think as we call here escrow officers in other states, they call them closing attorneys. That's because we've created in California a set of attorneys' powers that we call a subset for escrow officers. It's the same basic job, but you'd know the right questions to identify them. I'm sure there's a way to identify who does, because somebody has to perform as a fiduciary. If somebody's filing the paper for an underage child on a probate in New York, they may not be professionally identified as a fiduciary, but that's the job they're fulfilling. You just have to find the right language to understand what they, okay. Yeah. Fiduciaries and guardianships and conservatorships are two great sources. I know Chad's talked about them in the past for business, and they also tend to interact with a different subset of vendors, right? A lot of healthcare people, mental health care. So definitely there's a whole world there of business that is different than the standard probate lane that it's worth talking to. So who has questions? John, thank you for being on the call with us today. And I guess Chad's having some technical issues. Living in Virginia, I think, is a technical issue. I'm so spoiled. I have not one, but two fiber connections in my home office. So I know we have, if one goes down, I just flip the switch to the other one. But anybody have a question here? And it started in the beginning. I said to you guys, the more you participate, if your camera's off, you make more money. And if you ask more questions, I'll put more in the chat box, you make. Terry, Shell, I see your hand up.
Thank you very much, Bill. I've been a member of the organization, the certified probate expert, for a week and a half. And I have a list of already 10 vendors lined up. God, it's amazing. And I have my first meeting Thursday this week with one of the primary probate attorneys in Houston.
Nice.
He has an attorney. He has a firm with 4 or 5 other probate attorneys with him. He happens to be a member of the golf club, the private club where I marshal. That's how I know him. And I also have a registered investment advisor from the club that I'm bringing into my team. But I'm going in to meet with this probate attorney on Thursday morning early. Any suggestions about, I'm going to use the approach of value adds with the team of vendors that I bring to the table that do things that he isn't able to do, isn't hired to do, to try to create that relationship. And since we know each other, like, and trust each other, I think I have a good chance of getting him to make referrals and hopefully his other associates. But any suggestions that you would offer my virgin out of the gate meeting?
So I would say that my personal approach is the opposite of Chad's, in the sense that while I am very active and do what he says to do to build my Rolodex of vendors, I interview them and call them and promote them and such. I think in sales, my strategy is always to only offer to a client what they ask for. So I have a trifold brochure, and it has a circle with all the vendors on it and all different types. But when I discuss things, I try to say, what types of challenges or things do you get involved with that you might like to delegate? And I know Chad has that in his training, that script. The same thing we ask a probate a one time, but if you think about it, even though the attorney might do 10 or 20 cases a month even, then the same problem comes up probably a lot. And if you solve the problem, or minimize it or take it off their shoulders. So I end up with attorneys talking about how I specialize in a certain type of probate where there's court confirmation. And I actually will work with their paralegal and review the documents and review the probate notes. That's one of their pain points that they often talk about. That's a little different around the box. And I just tell them I'm fine to delegate doing the publications. I'll put on my credit card and get paid back when the property sells. I'll handle it. One of the challenges attorneys have is getting the money to pay for the storage, the clean out. I just tell them, look, with your agreement, I'll go ahead and put on my credit card and I'll manage all that for you and give you one bill when we close escrow or one bill once a month to pay on it. And so I think anything that saves them time and money, you're looking for their pain point. And then whatever it is, you got to figure out a way to solve that problem. And I always tell people, you either are the guy that solves the problem or you have a guy that solves the problem, or the gal or whatever. But your job is to be the solution, not to have the solution. You are the solution. Call me. And even when I have a paralegal who will send me an email requesting documents on property for research, and the attorney will say, I'm so sorry to bother with that. No, it's not a bother. I'm glad to research every property of every client you talk to. I don't do it. My virtual assistant does it, but I don't tell her that. But I'm saying, I'm glad to talk to them all and call you back with information. I have nothing more important than to research if that's your problem. My job is to solve the problem. I think in sales, our job is always to solve our customers' problems, not to sell what our inventory is.
Thank you. Yes,
That's my solution.
exactly the approach I'm using. What's your pain point? How can I take that one difficulty, that obstacle that you have, and if I took that over and handled it for you, how would that make your job easier?
Or two or three. I think we also have to be, sometimes they'll realize they'll tell you one and dig deeper. And I often feel like I'm a dentist, that I don't know about your test, but like they scrape a tooth, there's a little bit of pain. They're going to scrape a little deeper when they find the pain. You go deeper yet, because that's where the solution is, digging deep. And I think the same with any sales situation, tell me more about that. Well, how does that work? Well, how does that cause you problems? What kind of challenges does that cause you? So I think the deeper you go, that's more fundamental sales approach. And I think that I don't want to offer 15 things they don't need. I want to find the one or two things they think they really need and then go deeper.
I like it. Thank you.
Sure. John, any particular personal experience of when people, I'm not sure how it is. You must have realtors approach you, even though you also do the real estate sales. Any other particular insight on how to best approach an attorney he has the appointment. What does he do to convert that into an opportunity?
Yeah, I actually agree with what you're sharing, Bill. Just be a Swiss Army knife, find a way of uncovering what it is that the attorney all attorneys, not all attorneys, many attorneys are business owners, right? So even if it's not a challenge in the practice of the law, it might be a challenge in their business of some kind. So finding a way of uncovering that through conversation, asking those pointed questions, digging deeper, as Bill said, that's where you want to be, right? It's funny. I've had so many conversations with professionals. Leon, my business partner, and this is like 10 years ago. We had a sit down with an attorney and a mortgage broker. This is before I was licensed as a realtor. And they're like, what's your greatest pain point? We literally sat down and explained it to them. We said, we would like more probates. We're not allowed to solicit. We'd like to find out people who have recently lost somebody who may be unrepresented, who may be looking for counsel in that area. Through some research, we know that realtors and title companies have access to that kind of stuff, but we personally don't. And they're like, oh, that's really good. And then they disappeared. I never heard from them again. I was like, the point of this lunch, man. We literally spelled it out for them, how they could help us. And they were like, oh, that sounds like a lot of work, basically, and vanished. So don't do that. Obviously, do the opposite. Find out what their greatest business challenge is or professional and find a way of meeting those needs.
That is the work. That is the work, finding your customer's problem and figuring a way to solve it. And if you don't want to do that, find other customers and solve those problems, but definitely.
One other additional point about this. I'm not a realtor. I'm an investor, and I have a nationwide database of investors that I can work with for flipping purposes. And so I don't have the same spectrum of offerings that you who are realtors do, but I don't think that's going to be a handicap. Do you?
You have the exact same opportunity. And what I would say, two things I would say that. One is you can just find the right realtor on this call. And now you have that and you. So you have everything I have to offer plus you. And the second is, in my experience, virtually every attorney wants to find out more about investing in real estate. And that's a way to create a relationship. It might not specifically be a probate referral to you, but like anything else, if you help that person make money, of course, they're going to talk to you about upcoming real estate deals. And then if they're deals that have to be listed and you can't buy them, you want to feed them to your realtor partner, and then his job is then to bring you back some good real estate deals. So every attorney I ever met, when I had a chance to talk to them, would ask me about How do I invest? What deals do you have? How do I find those deals? Everybody wants to talk about making more money or building more wealth. And so you're that. And I also urge you strongly, if you're not a real estate agent in Houston, and you want to become one, then I would say find one in your area. And there's a lot of good ones. I'd be glad to make some introductions for you in that area, because I think it adds a superpower. And I also think you're going to be regulated at some point to where it's going to be. I know Renee says that she pays for videos for an attorney that they can use as marketing. I think that's if that's a common pain point, even if it's not a common pain point, if it's a pain point to the one attorney that you're talking to, then it becomes a great solution. And I've done that too. I interview attorneys. I do the opposite. I interview them, but my interviews get them. It's funny. I'll meet an attorney who has spent $10,000 and he's done 5 videos and he has 100 views total. And I'll interview him and get him more than 100 views on that one. Do the same thing to get some business. Okay. So Terry, they're asking for your contact info in the chat box if you want to share that. So somebody smart enough to here's a guy who needs a realtor in Houston.
Let me clarify that, Bill. I have an extraordinary list of realtors, commercial and single family residential, that have lived here for 40 years, was in the business for helping them. And I know a lot of realtors. That is not an issue, but I certainly have been had in my contact information, be willing to talk with anyone that has something that would maybe give me a competitive edge. I would appreciate it very much. Thank you all.
I would say this, that you don't know the right one for this particular need, because I'm not the right realtor to sell the house in the Palisades or Palos Verdes that Renee was talking about. I could do it, but the seller's not going to fall in love with me because I don't have that whole product mix. But I'm the right one to work with you on talking to an attorney who wants to invest in property, because I'm the LA probate expert and I have some things to back that up. So maybe you have a lot of realtors that you do a lot of business with, but you need one, if you're looking for probate business, that's a probate specialist or the probate expert of Houston. I don't know who that is. I imagine, maybe I do know who it is. I just don't know they're in Houston, but I would say if I was a Houston guy, I know your information. I'd track you down and I'd text you right now. Actually, if I was anyone's call in the Atlanta, who here is in Hotlanta? Put in the checkbox, say I'm in Atlanta or I'm in the ATL. DY3439 is asking for that. I think we should all be networking together. If you're investors, why don't you have a probate realtor? Even if you have other realtors for your acquisitions, other realtors for your dispositions, other realtors for your house, but you need one to help you in the lead gen and probate. I think you should be partnering up with somebody. And what I call 2 bites of the apple, right? I have investors who call list and then I market the same list and we'll commiserate on the leads. And oh, you talked to my associates on the property about 2 months ago. So definitely, I would say find an investor to work with if you're a realtor and vice versa. Okay, anything else on that, on what Terry's doing, talking to an attorney about referrals or any other? I'm in Atlanta. Good, Hervik. Thank you. Anybody else, any other questions, challenges, problems? Good morning. Good afternoon. How are you guys doing today? I can just tell you that the way you make more money is by participating. The more you talk, the more video you're on, just how it works. Okay, if you want other people to make all the money, that's fine. I am not shy about it. Gosh, I guess I haven't been in this car for a while. I recognize too many names. Melanie, have we met before? I don't think we have we?
Hello. No, we haven't officially met. How are you, Bill?
I'm great. If I was doing any better, it just would not be fair.
Yeah, exactly. I got a lot going on this week too. I'm excited. So,
Give me one piece of good news.
yeah, I'll make sure I jump in.
Okay, what's one piece of good news you have for the week though so far?
Don't give up, man. Do not give up.
Nice. Are you an investor, a real estate agent, both?
So I started as an investor and I got my real estate license a couple of years ago, but really just getting into the Tampa Bay market, and I got a couple of deals going. And my whole thing was, I don't think you were on a couple of weeks ago and I talked about it. I was so ready to walk. I literally was so done. And Chad was on, like, I'm so, but I got a really good lead and has led me to so many other great things. So I just want to tell people, don't give up. It's kind of my message, because as soon as it starts, it becomes a domino effect, right?
At some point, you can't stop it.
It's incredible the amount of people that need help. It just seems like everywhere I turn now, I've got people reaching out saying, I need you, or I can help you with that estate sale and all that. So it's really cool. And I love it. I really love it. It's been phenomenal.
Nice. Good job.
I'll quit talking.
Now we're live on Facebook, so we gotta be careful what you say. No more politics.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah, Kevin.
At the beginning of this time, Melanie was talking about some successes she had. I'd like to hear a little more about her story.
Sure. I asked her this question. She didn't want to respond to me. Melanie, fans are demanding. What was the success you had in this past?
Yeah. So I've been working with a gentleman in the St. Pete area. And unfortunately, this is pretty tragic. He lost his daughter, then he lost his wife. And so he was incapacitated, really not able to do a whole lot of things. So with taking this on, it has just taken me around every corner you could ever imagine, from the estate sale people, landscapers, power washers, and whatnot. I have built a whole network of people just dealing with this gentleman. But I will tell you that the joy, honestly, the joy that you feel when you sit down with these people and you know that you're doing something really good. So I just want to urge people to not walk away, because I really was going to walk away a few months ago, and I chose to just wait it out and see what would happen. And this one here is just leading on to so many different things for myself. This gentleman out looking at a few different homes and townhomes and whatnot. And we found one that we liked for him, and he was going to purchase that with either a HELOC or some sort of other private money until we could bridge over and sell his existing home, which is over $1 million. And he decided he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to spend his money that way. So I approached the listing agent and asked her, would it be possible if we could possibly do a lease purchase, lease option, something like that? And she said, no. Now we're out 3 weeks later. The market is cooling. They're not getting the traffic that they want. So she called me today and said, yes, we will do that. So I haven't done one of those. So I may need some help with that. But with that, the guy that I'm helping is an attorney. And the people that are going to be doing the title work is an elder care estate type of lawyer. So it has put me in a position to work with them. If we can get this gentleman out of the situation that he's currently in, puts me in a great lineup. It'll be a domino effect. It really will be. So my advice to everyone is just hold on, follow up with your clients. This was someone from like December. What else? So with that, obviously, we're meeting tons of vendors. They're going to help us obviously move forward with whatever we need their help with. We can promote them on my site. And also, one last thing I do want to say about that, the lady that called me back, the listing agent that called me back today, she is a property management owner.
Boom.
Booyah. And this was the biggest win of the week. And she said to me, you do know that I'm a property management team? And I said, I do. And I'd like to meet with you. And she said, great, because we have a ton of houses. So you guys, you never know where it's going to take you. Just ask a lot of questions, ask things that are alternative, especially like creative financing and things like that, because you honestly don't know what you're going to get, what you're going to dig up. People are the movement, the market shifting. You might have a greater opportunity to get a seller financing deal or some sort of creative financing where you can acquire those properties for yourself. So that's my little win for the week.
So when you start off at the beginning, you said something I think is right on, which is so much of our success is mindset. I think 90% of transformation is mindset. So if you're on this call and you're trying to go from this, not wealthy to wealthy, or not rich to rich, or not successful to successful, it starts with mindset. And I think one thing you have to change, and I would just maybe urge you to pay attention to, is if we think the victory is the check, I can tell you there's never enough checks to win. And I've had a lot of checks in the last few years. You've got to celebrate the small wins that lead to the checks. Because over time, if you believe in the system, those small wins will lead to the checks. Small wins like the appointments with referral sources, adding people in your database, those having an agent call you back, having an attorney call you back. Those are all important small wins that add up over time. Inevitably, it's math. You have enough of them, you get a check. But you don't get the check now, you get the check a year from now sometimes. Renee talked about, I think it was 2 years incoming and still not quite yet. But along the way, she's also learned and grown on business today. She's better today because of the work she's done on the deal that closed, not even the one that she is hoping to get 2 years from now. It's really important that we focus on the short numbers as well. Yes, checks are important, money is important. I run a P&L every month, review of online with a bookkeeper and QuickBooks, but every day it's about the individual victories, and that will keep you in the 100 days. So congratulations, Melanie. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Inspiring.
And Bill, you did in response to Melanie at the beginning of the hour, you said something to the effect of, keep going. There's a domino effect.
Yeah. Because I think that we think we plant a seed and then eventually a tree grows. But really, it's more like you throw some seeds and then a tree grows, but then 2 years from now, another one grows from the same seeds. Or some seeds blow off of that tree and create some more plants without your effort. And that's where the domino comes from. It's where deals you do yield new deals in the future without the same amount of effort. And so the challenge is going from 0 to sustenance or zero to what you perceive as success, but your momentum is going to carry well past that point if you stick at it. And that's where it becomes, to some time, it was for me, I want to say last year, almost overwhelming to keep up with the volume. And your mind starts to say, well, I need to back off. No, I need to back off. Everybody else has to worry about that. I told my wife, sorry, honey, you just got to figure this out because this is prime time. Money's coming in fast and I want to get what I can. I want to build the business as fast as I can. But your mindset starts to play those tricks with you. But definitely our efforts today yield results into the future that we can't see. Sometimes we see a little bit of it, but we don't see all of it. And that's why you have to celebrate those victories. You have to get launched where you're making some money and paying the bills so you don't have to quit and take that off the table. But once it's off the table, keep at it because that's where the long-term success comes from. There's attorneys I did a deal with, or a realtor I did a deal with, an investor 3 years ago, and I forget them. They call me back 3 years later. I didn't really, I keep them in my marketing campaign system. I email them and I do social media, but I can't say I really worked hard at it, but I created a relationship 3
And Bill, we all know this, but I think I'm going to say something that's just a reiteration that coat on your coattails of that. And you can be an investor or a realtor or whatever. I'm just going to speak to it as in realtor language. I'm doing a transaction right now where I used to be at this brokerage that the buyer's agent is at, and we weren't even really friends, like we were agent friends, but I like her character and I knew she'd be a good agent and all that. And so it's like these little micro relationships that you interact with or maybe acquire over the years that creep back up. Now, her name is Gina. I haven't seen Gina in 6 years, like literally seen her or talked to her. And she just popped into my life at this open house. And it was like we picked up where we left off. And that wasn't really influencing the transaction, but it didn't hurt. Because at least in the agent to agent community, there's a lot of yahoos out here and we're all trying to get to the finish line. And so at least that you can breathe a sigh of relief where you're like, all right, I know this person's going to like have their act together, but it compounds in some other weird way. So I liked your example of how you said like the, seed like blowing off the tree. That was one of those. I didn't plant that seed per se, but it blew off the tree. And so, and here it is, right? And we're doing a deal and it's going to be great. And there's no drama and like, amen, this is how they all should be.
Right.
So again, I'm stating the obvious, but just keep going, keep talking to people, keep going. That's all you can do. Yeah.
There's a phrase that's common in football, which is made famous by the New England Patriots, one of the most successful sports franchises in history, which was trust the process. At some point, you have to have a process that you work. You have to trust that yields results. And your job is to trust the process. And that doesn't mean you trust it forever, but maybe once a quarter, you review your numbers in detail, maybe once every 6 months and once a year, do a business plan. But in between those time periods, as a general rule in a quarter, I'll never review my process. I don't want to, I'm not going to add any new marketing. I'm not going to change anything I do. I'm not going to change my schedule. I'm working that process. People will call me and I'll say, let's talk in April. Let's talk in July because I'm working the process I have right now between May and June. My wife wanted me to go to New York for a family event and I bought her off with some earrings. So I'm going to have to go because this is prime time for me. I got events I'm sponsoring and team building stuff going on. And I said, this is prime time for me, honey. We've had some holidays and all that, but this is not time for me taking time off and going to New York, which I love going to New York, but I have a process I work. I try to stay on that. Okay, Clara asked anybody else in Arizona, if you're in the AZ, put yourself in the chat box for Claire to reach out, Claire Winnick to reach out to you. Do your job is a standard response from Coach Belichick as well. Yeah, do your job. So once you have a process defined, then your job is to do your job. Your job is not to do other people's jobs. It's not for other people to do your job. Your job is to do your job. And trust that they'll do their job. Trust your team members. It's just, people ask me all the time about TCs. I don't do the TC's job. I do my job. If I evaluate the TC's not doing good, I'll change TC's, but I'm not going to do the TC's job. I'm not going to do the escrow's job because I have my job to do. Okay. Hey, I think we're up against the hour. I don't know exactly how this works out, but I would say this, if you want to reach out to me, you're welcome to. I'm Bill Gross and my website's theprobateexpert.com. I host a weekly probate call, probateweekly.com. Welcome to join that. That's Thursdays at 4:00. This call is every week on Tuesdays at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and all the times in between. And you can find it on Probate Mastery. Probate Mastery is amazing. Chow was my first coach in probate. I had been exposed to others, but he's the first one that I really sat down and coached with, I wrote a business plan with, and changed my business. I've done a video for them before, but I want to say that it was a life-changing experience. I saw the opportunity. I wrote out a plan. I work that process and I trust that process. Sandy, it's probateweekly.com. It's on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time. Love to have you join that for free as well. I'll see you guys here next week. And if I can help, reach out to me. Otherwise, have a fantastic week, everybody. Thanks for your help, John and Renee and all
Thanks,
those,
Bill.
Kevin and all those, Terry. Thank you for sharing your stories today. Appreciate it.